Dane Mychal back here for Project Nerd with one of the esteemed guests from Colorado Springs Comic-Con this year, Terence or Terry Winkless.
You can call me Terence. I don't mind.
Terence?
That's
okay.
The official working name.
Okay. So Terence Winkless, you are here. There's a huge Banana Splits backdrop for you. I understand that you had some plane troubles and missed the panel yesterday.
There was a panel? I didn't know, honestly. It's the first I've heard of it. So I'm doing this now to make up for that.
Okay, that's awesome. So the panel went on, and it was just with Ann Withrow. But now you're here, and you're having a great Saturday, hopefully, at the convention.
It's swell.
Okay, so I don't really want to talk about Banana Splits too much, even though that's the branding for, the backdrop and everything. I'm actually a huge fan of the Howling, which you are the credited screenwriter for.
I'm one of the two screenwriters.
Okay. Now, can you tell me how this came to be as far as like the genesis for that script?
The genesis of that script is that Mike Finnell and maybe Joe Dante bought the rights to this book, The Howling, by Gary Brandner. And the first thing they did was throw the book out the window. They had me read the book. When I got the gig. You want me to go into how I got the gig? Let me tell that.
Sure,
It's a quick little story that I've told a couple of times. I could probably get to the chase. I used to play softball in Santa Monica on Sundays. Great game, co-ed. One day, Jack Sullivan came out to the game and got a ride home from another guy, and a script of mine that I'd written with a partner was in the backseat of another guy's car, and Jack said, "Is it okay if I read this?" Jack read it. He liked it. Jack said, "I know somebody who's looking for a writer to redo this script about werewolves. This script proves that you could write that kind of thing." So I went in and met with Joe Dante and Mike Finnell, and I did the second iteration of The Howling.
Excellent.
The one after Gary Brandner. The very first thing, they showed me the book, but pretty much the first thing we did was throw it out.
Now, did you have like a background in writing horror prior to that?
Not horror per se. As I say, the script that I'd written was about voodoo, and there was enough crossover in the feel of it that you could see that I'd be able to, have a guy say he transforms into a werewolf now.
Okay.
My part of it was, in that regard, very simple. It literally says he turns into a werewolf now. The real meat of that story is the great special effects.
Yes.
By Joe Batin. Mike, what was his name?
The person who did the special effects, I wish that I knew that.
Yeah,
but
well, it's been it's 40 years, so I'm not surprised. I don't quite remember.
So that was it was 1981 or 1980 or?
I think it was 1979. I got the gig. I think the movie came out in 1980.
Okay. And of course, it stars Dee Wallace, who has been a guest of this CF3 podcast. Did you get to be part of any of the filming on set, or did you ever visit the set during the shoot?
No, partly because they shot up in Mendocino and I was in LA. And rarely is the writer invited out to the set. And this was one of the cases where he was not. It didn't bother me. I was on to the next thing. When you're a working writer, you got to keep working to pay the rent.
What did you think of the finished product? Were you very happy? Yeah.
It was like going to the screening of that movie the first time. It was like having a dream. It was like a dream that I dreamt, and now there it was on the screen. It was very peculiar and gratifying, because I'd written any number of scripts before that didn't, you get close and you don't quite get there. The only other thing I'd done was there was a movie called Gone in 60 Seconds back in the early 70s.
Okay.
A guy, I was working as an assistant film editor for a guy named Warner Layton, good guy. And each week these car crashes would come in. And finally I got around to saying to the guy who was bringing them in, a guy named Toby Hallecky, what's the story here? I said, well, we don't really know what the story is. You see, Toby owned an acre of junked cars. And rather than be in the junked car business, he decided to be in the movie making business.
There you go.
So he grabbed a camera and a guy who was a cameraman, Jack Bassett, and he went out and shoot all these stunts, and they didn't really quite have a plot. And I said, if you'll let me direct the scenes, I'll give you a plot. So it's pretty all over the place, but you know, they were able to make it into another movie, another version of it with Angelina Jolie.
Was it
and,
Nicolas Cage in Gone in 60
Nicolas
Seconds?
Cage. Yes, absolutely.
Nicolas Cage. Yep. And so
He's nodding.
he's our researcher Q over here.
It's a pleasure to have you with us right now. I love it.
Pleasure to be here, my friends.
So you had a background in horror from The Howling, and then a few years later, The Nest is released. How did you come to be the director for that? Great movie about cockroaches, for those who don't know.
Julie Corman was emulating her husband in that she wanted to give a first-timer a shot.
Okay.
And so they called me. Actually, my agent gave them something I'd done, a short film. And it showed I could direct. It had been 17 years between the time I directed that little short and the time Julie saw it, but it still showed, you know, I could put the camera in the right place to get the right reaction. And I'll never forget, I had been writing something. Again, you got to keep working when you're a writer. And I was writing something, but I was so excited about the possibility of directing that I left the house 3 hours early to get across town and see Julie. And she had researched the fact that I was writing something and tried to call me and say, call off the meeting to say, no, you're writing something. You can't come to work for us. And to hell with that. I was already across town. I was already in her office being, in fact, it was between me and another guy, a good guy, Jeff Dillman. He did my second unit ultimately.
Okay.
The fact was that I was simply more excited about it than he was. I showed more out and out enthusiasm than he did, and I got the gig. It was great, you know, and back in the, boy, you know, it was a low budget film. We still had $650,000 and a 6-week schedule, which is unheard of these days.
Do you remember what the budget was approximately?
Yeah, $650,000, I think.
And good box office return then?
I don't really know. You know, that was back in the days. Rogers' deal with MGM was that it had to play in the major cities. They had to play in New York, LA, and Chicago.
That's right.
And,
MGM is distributed, right?
That was part of that deal. And yeah, I went and saw it in the theater. It was a trip and a half. And
so I recently read a Blu-ray review of The Nest. Scream Factory, for those who
Shout Factory.
Shout Factory, but their sub-label of horror movies is called Scream Factory. So they have this for sale on Amazon right now for $13.99 because I looked it up and I was like, I need a copy of this. Are you a fan of like those creature features? I mean, there was like a time where those were huge, like movies like The Bees, The Swarm. This is in that vein.
I wasn't a huge fan of those in particular, but in fact, one of the best things about my ability as a director, hand me anything, I'll figure out the right way to make it. Is the way I look at it. That isn't always true. No one bets 1,000%. But I did a spy movie. The only thing that was real failure was the comedy. Comedy, I'm witty, but I'm not funny. And I found that the hard way. The third movie I made was a comedy. Second one was a karate movie. Fourth one was a spy movie, and on and on. I've done, I don't know, a whole bunch.
Do you remember the name of the karate film?
Yeah, Blood Fist. They've done 8 Blood Fists now.
And they've probably done that many Howling too.
I lost track.
Okay, so I do want to talk about Banana Splits a little bit.
Sure.
But it's not the television show from the 70s. It is because we've been talking about horror, the horror film.
I think I watched 10 minutes of it. So what is this crap? How dare they take this thing that people have this they treasure in their memories and violate it like that? It was like watching a rape.
Okay, I was wondering what your opinion would be on that. Yeah, and that's definitive. That's definitive right there. So
he hasn't turned this off yet.
So I watched. I got to maybe 60 minutes through before I turned it off. But it's just a by the numbers. And the whole gimmick is let's basically, as you say, rape a children's television show that actually existed.
They're killer robots.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
as I
like
said,
Chopping Mall, Julie Corman film with
Jim
banana
Morrison
splits.
picture. It makes my head explode to even fathom that.
Okay, well, it has been great talking to you.
Sure.
Terence Winkless, everybody. Visit him rest of the weekend here at Colorado Springs Comic Con.
I'm here till at least tomorrow night.
He's got a booth right behind, it looks like Lark Voorhees from Saved by the Bell.
Cards, letters, and money to.
Yeah, get a selfie, autograph, all that stuff. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.